I still remember that morning. It was an early morning in 2016. It felt like a summer breeze, and there I was, on a 29th floor, reflecting as my eyes witnessed a beautiful sunrise from the balcony of my apartment in downtown Miami. I still had a lot of fear and uncertainty in my heart. At least I had already had the lock changed on my apartment, but the doubts were still creeping through my mind. That morning, several memories came to me that brought a smile to my face. I remembered the spring of 2009. I was half nomad, but at that time I was visiting my family in one of the neighborhoods where I grew up, Simón Rodríguez, near Pinto Salinas in Caracas, Venezuela. At that time, I had decided to donate my time by taking my passion to the prisons of Venezuela. I learned that from my father, who also brought a lot of joy and his art to those deprived of liberty. He used to say that any person can be transformed through art. I followed in his footsteps. I started going to the prison every week to give dance classes to the prisoners and bring them my joy. I hoped for a possible change in them. We danced and laughed together. It was an amazing experience. It was there when I could see with my own eyes that many times people who are condemned are human beings with confused souls. They are people who perhaps never received love, and that because of the life experiences they have had, they have become people who commit crimes. But I also know that being such a person is a choice. I come from compassionately understanding this because I took a strong lesson from those prisons. I lived very closely what freedom means. I understood that, and this is something that nobody told me. I lived it. And I saw that prisons are not made to reform a human being, at least most of them. After remembering this, I understood. I understood that jail wasn't going to make him change. At the time, I was suing him for punitive damages and defamation. He was also suing me because supposedly he was losing his jobs as consequence of my public denouncement. If that were the case, they were jobs he lost as a result of his own actions. The irony is that in his mind, I was responsible. As I mentioned to you earlier, this is very characteristic of narcissism, not taking responsibility at all. My lawyer explained to me on several occasions that if he went to jail, it would possibly be for several years, and that if so, my lawsuit against him would be affected for multiple reasons since that trial was several months away. And I must confess that I was tired of the fight. I wanted this nightmare to end. That is when the state raised the possibility of making him and his lawyer an offer that if he pleaded guilty to having beaten me, we would remove certain charges so he wouldn't go to jail physically and he would be assigned another type of sentence. That way we could continue with the civil lawsuit against him. I hesitated for a while, even though I was very emotionally drained. I just thought, after all this fighting, are we going to let him go free? It was when I remembered the prisons of Venezuela. I remember that the hope I felt for change in any human being. I thought maybe he will learn his lesson, maybe this act of compassion will make him change. And I sighed, I let myself go, and we put the offer on the table. To be honest with you, after all the attacks I received and him being represented by the $1 million lawyer, we never thought he and his lawyer would accept it. To our surprise, they accepted it. After lying for so long, he finally pleaded guilty. He accepted the offer, which consisted of 1 year's probation, reporting to the state on a monthly basis, taking anger management classes. In exchange, 2 criminal charges would be dropped, and we wouldn't continue the legal battle, which was likely to cost him several years in prison because the prosecution had 2 strong witnesses. And it was in November 2016, a year after the crime, that he officially pleaded guilty in front of the judge. You know what always seemed strange to me? That after having had a powerful lawyer, having fabricated a kidnapping case against me, having cheated so much so that they wouldn't give me the restraining order, having used his connections to attack me and defame me by every possible means, in the end he pleaded guilty without even trying to prove his supposed innocence. I was wondering, why did they give up? Could it be that he accepted his guilt because if he went to trial, he may be looking at several years in jail, since there were witnesses to the crime? Or could it be that this lawyer was hired to divert the attention of the press? Who knows? The curious thing is that most of the mainstream media, after having given so much coverage to the case of Ricky Martin's dancer, in the end said nothing. They never talked about the final verdict, about his guilt. I asked myself, why didn't they talk about this if this would motivate more victims of gender violence to denounce and give them strength to fight for their rights? I don't know. Maybe someone didn't want this news to come to light. Who knows? Generally speaking, only the Venezuelan press decided to talk openly about the final verdict. And I feel very grateful for that because I know that from a distance, this immigrant had the support of her people. The truth is, I also won this battle. The score was David 3, Goliath 0. On one hand, I felt relief and hope. I thought the fight was finally over. On the other hand, I felt I had made a very bad decision. I felt that I should have continued the battle until he was sentenced to several years in jail. But it was too late. Today, I confess that I later regretted having made that decision to accept the state's offer to him. Because after he pleaded guilty, his attacks on me didn't stop. He continued to defame me and lie about the truth of the facts, publicly alleging that I was a kidnapper, making many believe that I benefit from a supposed victim visa, and that is why he didn't go to jail. The truth is that I never needed a victim visa because by that time, as you know, I was already waiting for my artist residency. And the false kidnapping case was already closed. To make matters worse, on January 17, 2017, after he had pleaded guilty and I had changed all my passwords for security. My insurance company was due to pay me $30,253. However, days went by and the payment didn't arrive. When I began to investigate what had happened to my money, I fell back on my ass in bed again. The insurance company informed me that the money was routed to his account. My attorney, through a subpoena, requested copies of his statements, and indeed, he had already withdrawn my money from his account. Crazy, isn't it? He also violated his parole just 3 months into his sentence. At that moment, I lost hope that he would learn a lesson, and I knew that it was behind bars that he belonged. For many reasons, because aside from the fact that he is dangerous, he has no respect for the laws. For his violations of the law, the state sentenced him with another criminal charge against him, and for that charge he was imprisoned at home for the remainder of the period of his sentence. The prosecution always kept me informed of all this. Today, I think about the victims that may exist and have existed in the last 5 years. That thought constantly haunts my conscience. One criminal is free. Now there may be more victims. That's what my mind thinks. However, today I am aware that feeling regret and guilt will only bring contraction into my life and will not help me in my healing process. I genuinely want no other person, be it men or women, to go through what I went through. That is why I decided to tell this story, because I really want to warn any woman of what could happen to her with him or anyone with similar behaviors like him, so we can prevent. Since I know I'm not the only one, I want them not to feel alone. Today, after 5 years, I can understand that I was preyed upon, just like other women were. The fact that he is guilty today leaves a very notable precedent in his criminal record. Possibly any other woman he abuses, tortures, or mistreats, and she has the strength and courage to go to court, will make it very difficult for him, and maybe he will have to face serious legal consequences. It just requires the courage and bravery of more women, and if the crime isn't recent, it can still be valid. Let's look at the example of Harvey Weinstein. It took years for justice to be done. In the face of so many rapes and harassment, justice was done. Never is too late to denounce and speak out. Finally, in April 2018 was the civil trial for the lawsuit I filed against him for defamation and for all the physical, economic, emotional, labor, and psychological damages I went through. I really had no idea that they would be as serious as I have experienced them, especially the psychological ones. Those has been very serious. I remember it was a sunny morning in Miami and I was entering a court building again. In the trial, there would be 2 cases being debated: my lawsuit against him and a counter lawsuit that he introduced me. As I mentioned to you earlier, he was countersuing me. He didn't come to the trial to witness his defeat. This time it was a new lawyer who was defending him. My lawyer was very convinced that everything would work out and that justice would be done. I was nervous, but this time there was a freshness. It was like an air of victory. The trial went fairly quickly. The judge studied both cases, and it was incomprehensible to the judge why he was suing me, and even more so when he had committed a crime of which he was guilty. As the judge was about to give his verdict, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. We won. We won a lawsuit for $1,045,000. As much money as it seems, I haven't collected a dollar yet because my health, my body, and my emotions put me between a rock and a hard place. You know, the trauma of everything I've been through was reflected in my body, forcing me to pause. I also didn't want to know about lawyers or legal battles these past few years. I needed to heal, to regain my strength. Today, I have regained my strength and I'm ready to keep fighting. I am willing to collect the lawsuit, and I'm looking for lawyers who are sympathetic to the cause and to my fight and who are interested in helping me collect that money. My mission is to create a fund with a portion of this money to help more victims, to help them get through terrible times like the ones I went through, and to provide them with resources to defend themselves in legal battles. And as you know, it's hard. And if you are a lawyer in Miami, Florida, and you want to represent me in this case and be part of the cause, please contact me. I would be very, very grateful, and many women will thank you for it too. Finally, after all the dirty battles, lies, defamations, and attacks, the score was David 4, Goliath 0. Yes, in total there were 4 battles won by me and the woman fighting for her rights. This fight was on behalf of every victim, every abused, stalked, persecuted, and murdered woman, every woman who screamed, asked for help, and no one listened. This was for them, for me, and for those who in their silence hold the darkest memories anyone could ever imagine. If you have gone through unfair, toxic, abusive, and painful circumstances, I would like to help you recognize and validate those experiences and emotions. Let's take steps full of self-love, courage, and vulnerability, because you deserve it. Go to the link in the description, maggalife.com/liberation, and get your masterclass and workbook. It's free. With love, Magdiel.